Page 264, certificate pilots, certificate joint operation pilots. Engineer certification, reference guide, Federal Railroad Administration, revised August 2000. Certificate and pilots, certificate joint operation pilots. This section refers to guidance covering the requirements of the certificate, including reliance upon the other countries and other railroads joint operation use of pilot, joint operation territories, non-joint operation territories. Issuing railroad and parent company statement, the qualification, identification, person, the name, the date of birth, employee, the ID, physical description, photograph, the issue within 30 days, criteria of a certificate. As an amendment, each certificate issued complying with the Part 240 of the railroad parent company, the issue with the individuals must still qualify with the program. Each of the short line railroad, whether they are certified to operate at each of these railroads, must maintain appropriate records as required in Part 240 of preamble of the 1999 final rule. Indicate the railroad acting with conformity with Part 240 has determined who the person who is being used has been determined to be qualified to operate a locomotive, but this does not have the statement that it should be referred to the Part 240 to identify with the person over whom they are being issued with the include with the person over the name of the date of the birth, the employee with the identification number, the social security number, either physical description over the height, weight, and the eye color, over the hair color, over the photograph of the person. Railroad shall issue for each of the designated person designated certified locomotive engineer certificate comply with the 240-223 no later than 30 days of the date of the decision, certified with the recertified with the person 240-223. Conditions and restriction classes of service division and hearing date of the issuance of signature of the designated supervisor, locomotive engineer, or designee, certificate with the criteria for the certificate, identifying the condition limitation, including the class of service, the condition with the Alma right, vision for the hearing, acuity, deficiency with the restrict with the person's operational authority. See page 47 of the certification evaluation tab. Notice some of the short line railroads abbreviation class for the service, for the TS, for the train, for the LS, for the locomotive service without spelling out for the class of the agreement to have in the reach for the ASLRA. Engineers recertified completing the spelling of the class will be inserted on the cards. If the engineer's instructor or engineer of the recommended for this be identified with the short label, but it's not required to show the date of the issuance, besides supervisor, locomotive engineers of the other individual designated according to 240, 230, 23B for the writing of the authorized sign. If the certificate is identified by name and job title, no chief counsel agreed to allow the use of the check signature machine that endorsed the cards of Burlington Northern. Certificate date, last operational monitoring an event, check ride simulator and event recorder, wallet size, criteria show the certificate, show the date of the person last operational monitoring an event, running 240, 129, 240, 303, check ride simulator event with a record reading, unless with the information reflected with the supplementary documents of the locomotive engineer his or her possession with the operating a locomotive with the station small size, being carried in the ordinary pocket wallet. Note that in 240, 223A, they shall be permitted the railroad, including with additional information on the certificate, supplementing the certificate through the other documents. Union Pacific practice with Union Pacific photo identification with certificate of the team. Certificate is not prohibited. Both of the documents must be with the engineer position available upon the request of the FRA. If one of the two prescribed documents is not available, we consider the engineer for the proper certificate. We won't accept the certificate with the other pictured ID for the driver license, college ID, credit cards, etc. See attached January 25th, 1996 with the email memo to Jim Schultz, staff director, of further explanation for the answer. The question that arises: who owns the engineer? Who owns an engineer certificate? The answer to the railroad issue for the certificate owns the certificate. Certificate replacement. Railroad shall have the system of the prime replacement along with the home of the mutilated certificate for the system should be reasonably accessible with the certified locomotive engineer's name of the replacement certificate. What if the engineer forgets if the certificate at home, the railroad certificate, the railroad shall have the system with the promptly replace with the loss until the mutilated certificate for the system shall be reasonably acceptable certified locomotive engineer for the replacement certificate. Question: prior to the conducting onboard training observation, you ask for the chief of the engineer certificate. How does he have it say he has left it at home? What should you use the inspector to? Answer: have the engineer talk to the railroad officer for the gift of the replacement temporary certificate as soon as possible. If the convinced of the engineer is a certified engineer acting within the limitation of the certificate, do not delay the train and waiting for the arrival or replacement certificate. Certificate qualification: unwillfully any railroad knowingly and individually willfully may cover the made for the participate in the making of the false entry on the certificate unless otherwise false will apply certificate material misstatement, omission, the mutilation. It should be unlawful that any of the railroad knowingly and individuals willfully may cause for the be made participate in making any false entry on their certificate, otherwise falsify certificate with a material misstatement, omission, the mutilation, and beneficially with the 247 the making have the actual knowledge facts for the given and the rise violation with a reasonable person acting in circumstances exercising due care would have had such knowledge. Certificate prohibited conduct. Each engineer must have the certificate in his possession while on the duty of the inner display certificate on risk. FRA representative officer issuing railroad officer joint operation railroad. Prohibited conduct. Each local manager for the receipt of the certificate required under Part 240 shall have the certificate in his or her possession while on the duty of the inner display with the certification on the receipt of the request to do so for the representative of the FRA officer of the issuing railroad officer and other railroad operating in a local of the training with the joint operation territory civil abilities of the engineer to either carry his certificate to display the will request to each of $1,000. Reliance of the qualification of the countries if the railroad conduct for the joint operation with the Canadian Railroad or Canadian Railroad is required to comply with it. They meet certified persons qualified to determine and employed with the Canadian Railroad meets the receive of the qualification standards issued by the Transport Canada. This section contains the requirements of the railroad wants to rely on the system of the locomotive engineer qualification for the established by the Transport Canada. The railroad conducts joint operation within the Canadian Railroad may certify for the purpose of complying with the Part 240 with a person qualified to be the locomotive of the train service engineer provided with the determinants of the person is employed with the Canadian Railroad. The person meets the receive of the qualification standards issued by the Transport Canada such as services. Any Canadian Railroad required to comply with this regulation must certify that the person is qualified to be the locomotive of the train service. The engineer provided with the determinant of the person is employed with the Canadian Railroad. The person meets the receive of the qualification standards issued by the Transport Canada for service. The AAR petition for the FRA qualification requirement of the Mexican Operation Acts is FRA to provide for the scheme analogous to afford of their other operations close to the border of Canada. FRA to deny the aspect of the position because there is no significant operation conducted in the U.S. by Mexican engineers 240-227. Reliance on qualification made by another railroad. Railroad must address his program submission, and the engineer will have to go through the entire program. May rely on qualification determined made with another railroad, but may determine the prior certification as valid certification of the same class of service. Railroad that is considered certification of the person to qualify with any reliable determination made with another railroad concerning the person qualification of the railroad certification program shall address how the railroad administer with the training with a previously uncertified with the engineer with the extent of the operating experience with the previously certified engineer who have had their certification expire. If the railroad certification program fails to specify the how to train with a previously certified engineer hired from another railroad, then he shall be required the newly hired engineer to take the hiring railroad's entire training program. Railroad relying on another certification shall determine if the prior certification is still valid in accordance with the provision 242.01 schedule for the implementation 242.17 time limitation 243.07 of revocation. Prior certification was the same classification of the locomotive training service as certification being issued for the under this section. The person has received the training on the visual core observed with the physical characters for the new territory in accordance with the 241.23 initial continuing education 242.25. Reliance on qualification made by another railroad, received training and another visually observed physical characters for the new territory, demonstrate the knowledge of the operating rules and performance skill for the person with the demonstrate the necessary knowledge concerning the railroad's operating rules in accordance with the 241.25 of the knowledge check for the person demonstrate the necessary performance skill for the concerning the railroad's operating rules in accordance with the 241.27 of the performance skills. Definition: joint operation. Joint operation means rail operation conducted by more than one railroad on the same track, regardless of whether the scope of the operation or as a result of the contractual agreements between the railroad, order, governmental agency, or court of law, any other legally binding directive. The definition of the joint operation means operation conducted by one or more railroads, same track, regardless of whether such operation or result of the contractual agreement between railroads, order of the governmental agency, of the court of law, any other legal binding directive. Joint operation, except for the minimal joint operation, no hope of the railroad shall permit the requirement of the person to operate unless the certified issued certificate host of the railroad must comply with the denoting supplemental certification decision on the original certificate. Host railroad shall certify person or rely on other railroad certification requirements of the joint of the operation territory, except for the minimal joint operation of railroad they have the reasonable control of the conduct with the joint operation with another railroad shall have the permit of requiring any of the person to operate with a locomotive of any class of train engine service unless the person has been certified to have the qualified locomotive engineer for the purpose of the joint operation for the issue of the certificate of the comply with the 240-223 railroad of the controls joint operation certificate locomotive engineer with a different railroad may comply with above the requirement of notifying the supplemental certification decision of the original certificate is provided in 240-223. See with additional information on the certificate. Note that the control railroad must document those certificates in the joint operation 240-221. Each railroad that is responsible for controlling the conducting joint operation with another railroad shall certify that the person is qualified locomotive engineer for the purpose of the joint operation either by making the determination required of the Part 240 subpart C implementation certification or by relying on the certification issued by another railroad under Part 240. Alright, host railroad relying on another railroad certification. Host railroad shall determine the person has been certified with employed railroad knowledge of the operating rules, with the different of the operating skill, with the familiar with the physical characteristics required with the joint operation territory, contained with the preamble of the interim final rule, page 1899 and 80. FRA will hold the control railroad responsible for the enforcement possible. Purpose of the railroad control of the joint operation must rely on the certification issued with another railroad under the following condition. One, with the controlling railroad shall determine the person have certified with a qualified engineer over the provision part 2 for the railroad, which employ with the individual the person certified with a locomotive engineer by other railroad to demonstrate with the necessary knowledge of the controlling railroad operating rule. The rules are different, but the person certified with a locomotive engineer by the other railroad has necessary operating skill with the concerning by the joint operation territory, and person certified locomotive engineer by other railroad just necessary familiarity, physical characteristics, joint operation and territory, and host railroad relying on another employing railroad shall call for the operate host railroad qualified to operate the track, and engineer must be qualified on the track per host railroad requirements. Engineer must immediately notify the employee railroad if not qualified. Performance of joint operating territory conducted. Continue the railroad shall individual shall determine the person called to operate with the control of the railroad. A certified engineer qualified to operate on the track of the segment. Each locomotive engineer can call for the operate, and another railroad shall be qualified on the segment of the track on which he or she will operate in accordance with the requirements set forth by the controlling railroad. Immediate notice of the railroad upon which he or she was employed, he or she was qualified to perform that service. Host railroad relying on another railroad. Circle the FRA recommends that the host railroad evaluate the training program of the foreign railroad. FRA recommendation and requirement of the 240-229 when the controlling railroad, except for the certification foreign railroad, LUA issuing with its own certification. The FRA recommends controlling railroad evaluate the training program of the foreign railroad. The controlling railroads review the foreign railroad training programs will ensure that the foreign engineers have received sufficient training for the operating over the controlling railroad lines. Controlling railroad file with the recommendation shall have the easier time making required determination pursuant to 240-220C1 will be in compliance with both and later intent with the regulation C8 and 9 op 2001 for explanation of the background for this recommendation. Engineer, pilot, joint operation, host railroad may provide a qualified person to accompany with the engineer who lack with the joint operation certificate. Qualified person will meet with the designated supervisor, locomotive engineer, certified trained service engineer, determine having the necessary knowledge of the operating rule, operating skills, whom familiarity with physical characteristics may be a true crane member. The requirements of the joint operation territory continued. Railroad responsible for controlling the conduct of the joint operation with another railroad shall deem with compliance with the 240-229A, which will provide with a qualified person to accompany the locomotive engineer who lacks joint operation certification during the engineer's operation joint operation territory. As you in section, qualified person means either the designated supervisor, the locomotive engineer, certified trained service engineer determined by the controlling railroad to have the necessary knowledge concerning the controlling railroad operating rules and to the necessary operating scope, including familiarity with the physical characteristics concerning joint operation territory and joint operation territory of the pilots that might be trained crew member unless not joint operations home road as long as the crew member is certified engineer. Minimal joint operation, joint certification not required. Maximum authorized speed does not exceed 20 miles on track. It's other than the main track. Operation is conducted under the equivalent of a restricted rule, and maximum distance for the joint operation on the track does not exceed 1 mile. Railroad responsible for the controlling of the conduct with the joint operation of another railroad may permit certified locomotive engineer to operate with the locomotive of the class crane with the engine service without determining with the purpose of the certified and qualified locomotive engineer for the purpose of joint operation with a minimal joint operations involved with the purpose of the section minimal joint operation because for the locomotive of the train belonging in the one railroad being operated with the same track of the operation with the conducted by the railroad controlling operation under the following condition. Maximum authorized speed operation track does not exceed 20 miles on tracks as other main track operation conducted under special operating rules require for the locomotive train to proceed with a speed of permanent stopping within 1/2 range of the division with the locomotive engineer. Maximum distance of the joint operation of the track does not exceed 1 mile. This amendment was result of the position of the rate conservation ARR in American Short Line does not apply without plant railroads operating on a general system railroad 240-229F. Pilot non-joint operation. No engineer shall operate with a locomotive over the territory unless he or she is qualified on the physical characteristics of the territory unless assisted with a qualified pilot or pilot exemptions. Requirements of the locomotive engineer unfamiliar with the physical characteristics of the joint operation, except providing the 240 through 31 qualified pilot or 240 231C pilot exemption. The locomotive engineer shall operate the locomotive over a territory unless he or she is qualified with the physical character for the territory pursuant to the railroad certification program. Definition: qualified means the person who passed all of the appropriate training with the testing program required with the railroad over the Part 240 of the therefore who has actual knowledge of the venue of the responsible expected to have the knowledge of the subject on which the person is qualified. Pilots, non-joint operation qualified pilot, one who is not assigned with a crew member but never been qualified engineer pilot must be certified with a qualified engineer previously qualified but expired with the engineer. The pilot may be any qualified person. The requirements for the locomotive engineer unfamiliar with the physical characteristics of the other low operations continued. Separate provided 240 231 joint and pilot exemption for the locomotive engineer lacks qualification physical characteristics required in 240 231A. He or she would be assisted by the pilot qualified over the territory pursuant to the railroad certification program. For a locomotive engineer who has never been qualified on the physical character of the territory over which he or she would operate a locomotive train, the pilot shall be a person qualified with a certified locomotive engineer who is not assigned with a crew member. For a locomotive engineer who is previously qualified on the physical character of the territory over which he or she would operate the locomotive train with its qualification as expired with the pilot may be any person who is not assigned crew member qualified as the physical characteristics of the territory. Pilot exemptions and no joint operation average grade less than 1% over 3 continuous miles over the main track, a maximum distance of 1 mile, maximum speed 20 miles an hour, stop range within half the range of the operations. Requirements of locomotive engineers unfamiliar with physical characteristics other than joint operation continuous pilots are not required to meet or not required if the movement in a section of the track is average grade less than 1% over the continuous track. If the track is over the main track, regardless of the distance of the maximum distance of the locomotive train will be operated does not exceed 1 mile on the main track, regardless of maximum authorized speed. The exemption will allow the unqualified engineer to operate movement through a yard on the south side of the main track with using the main track less than a mile of the yard out on the north side of the main track. Maximum speed of any of the operation track does not exceed 20 miles per hour of any of the track, regardless of the distance. The operation will be conducted under operation rule that required every locomotive of the train proceed with a speed permanent stop with 1/2 of the range vision of the locomotive engineer on the track, regardless of the distance above the criteria of the pertinent restriction 240 231 preamble of 1998 proposed rule. Pilot exemption, no joint operation pilot exemption apply with the railroads to consider whether there was a direct relation between the violation and engineering and familiarity with the territory, so the engineer certificate should be revoked. The preamble of the 1998 rule prohibits the considering whether the suspended revoked with the person certificate when the person with the operating pursuant with the one exemption with the 240 231C of the railroad should consider the following issue with the engineer notified of the railroad official that he or she was unqualified to operate over the territory with the engineer is ordered by the railroad official to operate over the territory as well, with the official knowing that the engineer was unqualified, and if the one exemption with 240 through 31C would apply, but there was a direct relation between the alleged operational misconduct event with the 240 117E 1 through 5 of the engineers unfamiliar with the territory. If the line with the alleged violation, which was called the original engineer's territorial unfamiliarity, 240-307I with the intervening call with the minimal nature could be with the reference of the defendant with alleged misconduct, with examples if the engineer operating the distance for less than 1/2 mile without a pilot train passes the signal requiring with a complete stop that was around the curve that arguably with the engineer passed of the signal due to his or her unfamiliarity, lack of the pilot, the provoking engineering certificate under certain circumstances would. Okay. Pilot exemptions, if there's no direct relation between the violation and the engineer's unfamiliarity with the territory, engineer would be held liable for his or her conduct. On the other hand, if an alleged violation occurred that is unrelated with the engineer unfamiliar with the territory, engineer would be held liable for his or her conduct. For example, if the engineer operating without a pilot with his unfamiliar with the territory, tip of the operation required with the operation of the track does not exceed 20 miles an hour per assumed with the 240 231C with the one pilot exemption of the engineer should be probably to have the certificate revoked with the operating 10 miles or more above the maximum authorized speed. It's unlikely under such condition physical characteristics somehow would have helped cause alleged violation such as pilot would be required if the unfamiliar territory was over heavy grade. And then it goes into the petition letters. We're on annual operating monitoring check ride inefficiencies.